Let me tell you something, and I want you to really hear me today. Just because a man stays away doesn't always mean he doesn't care. Sometimes the reason he's gone is because what he feels is bigger than what he knows how to handle. See, when a man loves you for real, it scares him in a way he never expected. Love ain't just butterflies and smiles for him. Love feels like responsibility. Love feels like risk. Love feels like the possibility of losing something he never wants to lose. Love doesn't always show up the way you expect it to. Everybody thinks love is supposed to be loud, close, constant, full of attention and reassurance. But sometimes real love comes in the form of restraint. Sometimes love is quiet. Sometimes love steps back. And I know that messes with your mind because you're asking yourself, if he loves me, why isn't he here? But see, that question assumes love only moves in one direction. It doesn't. When a man truly cares, he becomes aware of the weight of his presence. He starts realizing that his words matter more, his actions matter more, and his mistakes could hurt deeper. That awareness changes how he moves. A man who doesn't love you will rush in, say anything, promise everything, and think nothing of the consequences. But a man who loves you starts to measure himself. He slows down. He thinks. He holds back, not because he's unsure about you, but because he's suddenly very sure about how much you mean. Restraint is not weakness. Restraint is discipline. It takes strength for a man to say, I feel something powerful here, and I don't want to mishandle it. Some men know they're not in the best place emotionally, financially, or mentally. And instead of dragging you into that chaos, they choose distance. That distance isn't rejection, it's protection. It's him saying, without words, I don't want my broken pieces cutting you. Men don't always have the language to explain this. We weren't raised to sit down and unpack emotions neatly. We were taught to fix things, control things, suppress things. So when love shows up in a way that can't be controlled, the instinct is to step back and get a grip. A man in love feels exposed. He feels vulnerable. And vulnerability is unfamiliar territory for most men. Distance becomes the safest place to stand while he figures out what to do with those feelings. You see, closeness requires readiness, not desire, not attraction, not chemistry, readiness. A man can want you deeply and still know he's not ready to show up the way you deserve. When that happens, staying away feels more honest than coming close with empty hands. He doesn't want to make promises he can't keep. He doesn't want to give you half effort and call it love, so he pauses. He restrains himself. He chooses space over false closeness. And this is where it gets confusing for women, because from the outside it looks like indifference. It looks like mixed signals. But inside his mind, it's a battle. He's weighing his feelings against his reality. He's asking himself if he can maintain consistency, if he can protect your heart, if he can live up to what love actually requires. And if the answer isn't solid, restraint feels like the most respectful option. Love that's careless is always nearby. Love that's intentional is careful. A man who loves you doesn't want to rush into something sacred and treat it casually. He knows once he steps fully in, there's no turning back, so he waits, he watches, he grows. And sometimes that growth happens at a distance, not because he doesn't want you, but because he wants to be right when he has you. When a man loves you, it doesn't always look like pursuit. Sometimes it looks like hesitation, like pauses in conversation, like space that feels uncomfortable to you, but necessary to him. That's because deep emotions trigger something in a man that shallow attraction never does. Love forces him to look at himself. It asks questions he can't ignore, questions about responsibility, stability, and purpose. And when those questions hit harder than the answers, distance becomes his response. A man who doesn't care has nothing to protect. He'll come close without thought, make promises without intention, and leave without explanation. But a man who truly loves you feels the risk of being careless. He understands that his presence has power over your emotions, and that awareness changes him. He starts worrying about whether he might hurt you, disappoint you, or fail you. That fear doesn't come from weakness, it comes from caring deeply about the outcome. Men are wired to avoid failure, especially in areas that matter. Love matters. So when a man senses that he's not at his best, emotionally overwhelmed, financially unstable, or mentally unsettled, he may choose to step back. Not because he doesn't want you, but because he doesn't want to offer you a version of himself he's ashamed of. Distance in that moment feels more honorable than closeness built on insecurity. There's also something else happening inside him that often goes unnoticed. Love brings vulnerability, and vulnerability makes a man feel exposed. He realizes you now have the power to hurt him in ways no one else can. That realization is frightening. So he creates space, not to escape the feeling, but to understand it. He needs room to process emotions he was never taught how to express out loud. While you're wondering why he's not calling or why he seems quieter than before, he's trying to make sense of the shift inside himself. He's asking whether he can live up to the expectations love brings, whether he can be consistent, whether he can show up when things get hard. And until he feels grounded in those answers, staying away feels safer than stepping forward and falling short. Love that's impulsive rushes in without thought. Love that's real slows everything down. A man who loves you doesn't want to move fast and damage something meaningful. He understands that once he crosses certain emotional lines, there's no undoing it. So he hesitates. He pauses. He chooses distance as a way to respect the depth of what he feels. And this is the part that's hardest to accept. Distance doesn't always mean absence of love. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it's proof that the feelings are too strong to be treated lightly. A man who loves you but stays away is often trying to protect both you and himself from a situation he isn't fully ready to handle yet. When a man pulls away just as things start to feel real, it can shake your confidence and make you question everything. You start wondering what you did wrong, what changed, or whether the feelings were ever real to begin with. But the truth is, when emotions deepen for a man, his first instinct isn't always to lean in. Often it's to retreat. Not because love disappeared, but because it suddenly became serious. Men experience emotional depth differently. When love moves from interest to attachment, it triggers pressure. Pressure to be consistent. Pressure to provide emotional safety. Pressure to live up to an unspoken standard. And when that pressure hits before a man feels prepared, distance feels like relief. It gives him time to breathe, to think, and to assess whether he can handle what loving you truly requires. A man who loves you becomes acutely aware that his actions can affect your heart. That awareness doesn't exist with casual interest. Casual interest is carefree. Love is careful. He starts replaying conversations in his head, wondering if he said the right thing, if he gave the right signals, if he's leading you somewhere he can't yet follow through on. To avoid causing confusion or pain, he may choose silence over mixed messages, space over inconsistency. There's also the fear of messing things up. Men don't talk about this much, but it's real. When something matters deeply, the possibility of failure feels heavier. Loving you means risking loss, rejection, or regret. So instead of moving forward recklessly, he slows down. He steps back. He tries to regain control over emotions that suddenly feel overwhelming. Sometimes that distance is his way of protecting you from his own uncertainty. He knows that being half present can hurt more than being absent. He understands that showing up without clarity can create false hope. So he chooses space not to punish you, but to prevent himself from making promises he's not ready to keep. That space is him buying time to align his feelings with his ability to act on them. Men are often taught to solve problems internally. When something feels out of control, the response is to withdraw and fix it alone. Love isn't something you can fix with logic, and that frustrates a man. Distance gives him the illusion of control while he figures out what role love is meant to play in his life. He's not trying to push you away forever. He's trying to understand how close he can come without failing. What looks like emotional absence can actually be emotional overload. He feels too much too fast and doesn't know how to express it without feeling exposed. So he goes quiet. He becomes distant. He chooses solitude over vulnerability until he feels strong enough to open up again. It's important to understand that not every man who stays away is playing games. Some are wrestling with the seriousness of what they feel. They're measuring their readiness against the depth of the connection. And until those two things match, distance feels like the most responsible choice he knows how to make. Sometimes a man stays away not because his feelings are weak, but because they are strong enough to change him. When love enters his life unexpectedly, it forces him to confront parts of himself he's been avoiding. It brings up questions about commitment direction and whether he's living the kind of life that can support someone else. That internal shift can be unsettling, and when a man feels unsettled, his instinct is often to create distance. A man who loves you begins to see you as something precious. And when something is precious, you don't handle it carelessly. He starts thinking about the consequences of every move. One wrong step, one careless word, one moment of inconsistency could damage what he feels. That awareness slows him down. It makes him cautious. He'd rather step back than risk hurting you while he's unsure of himself. There are times when a man recognizes that his current situation doesn't match the future he imagines with you. Maybe he's not where he wants to be financially. Maybe he's emotionally tired from past experiences. Maybe he's still carrying unresolved baggage. Instead of bringing you into that unfinished chapter, he pauses. Distance becomes a form of respect. It's him saying, "You deserve better than the version of me I am right now." Men also struggle with the idea of being seen before they feel ready. Love exposes flaws. It highlights insecurities. When a man loves you, he knows you'll eventually see all of him, not just the confident surface. If he hasn't made peace with his shortcomings, he may pull back. Not to hide forever, but to work on himself privately before stepping forward fully. What feels like emotional coldness is often emotional self-preservation. He's protecting his pride, his sense of control, and the image he wants to present to you. Distance gives him time to strengthen himself, to regain balance, and to prepare for the vulnerability that love demands. For him, stepping away temporarily feels safer than being close and exposed. A man who doesn't care has no problem being inconsistent. He'll come and go without concern for how it affects you. But a man who loves you is aware of the emotional impact he has. That awareness can make him hesitant. He doesn't want to start something he can't sustain. He doesn't want to awaken feelings he can't honor. So he chooses space, hoping that time will bring clarity and confidence. Love changes a man's priorities. It makes him think beyond himself. And sometimes that shift requires solitude. He needs time alone to understand how you fit into his life, not just emotionally, but practically. Distance becomes a thinking ground, a place where he can align his intentions with his actions. So when he stays away, it's not always rejection. Sometimes it's reflection. Sometimes it's preparation. Sometimes it's a man trying to become worthy of the love he feels before he steps close enough to risk losing it. There are moments when a man realizes that love is no longer just a feeling, it's a responsibility. And that realization can be heavy. When he loves you, he starts understanding that his presence in your life carries weight. His words can build you up or break you down. His actions can bring peace or confusion. That awareness can make him hesitate because he doesn't want to step into your life carelessly. Staying away for him can feel like the safest way to make sure he doesn't do damage before he's ready. A man who loves you thinks beyond the moment. He starts looking at the bigger picture, asking himself where this is going and what it demands from him. Love doesn't just ask for affection, it asks for consistency, patience, and emotional maturity. If he feels like he's still growing in those areas, distance becomes his pause button. It's not that he doesn't want to move forward. It's that he doesn't want to move forward unprepared. Many men are raised to believe they must have everything together before they commit fully. So when love shows up before he feels complete, it creates internal conflict. He wants you, but he also wants to be the man he believes you deserve. If he feels behind in life, emotionally or practically, he may pull back to work on himself. That distance is his way of trying to close the gap between who he is and who he wants to be for you. There's also the fear of disappointing you. When a man loves you, your opinion matters more than anyone else's. The thought of letting you down can be terrifying. He doesn't want to promise stability if he's still unstable. He doesn't want to promise forever if he's still figuring out tomorrow. So instead of speaking too soon or acting too fast, he creates space. Silence feels safer than saying the wrong thing. Sometimes staying away is about emotional protection. Love opens doors that can't be closed again. Once he lets himself fully step in, he knows there's no pretending anymore. You'll see his flaws, his fears, his unfinished parts. If he hasn't accepted those parts himself, closeness feels risky. Distance gives him time to come to terms with who he is, so he doesn't feel exposed when he eventually stands in front of you emotionally. Men also process emotions internally. When feelings grow intense, they retreat to understand them. What looks like avoidance is often deep thinking. He's replaying moments, weighing possibilities, and trying to understand how his life would change if he chose love fully. He's not ignoring you. He's trying to make sense of the shift happening inside him. A man who doesn't care won't worry about timing or readiness. He'll act on impulse and deal with consequences later. But a man who loves you is careful. He knows that starting something meaningful requires intention. He understands that love isn't just about chemistry, it's about responsibility. So he slows down. He steps back. He chooses patience over passion because he wants what comes next to be real. Sometimes distance is also about self-respect. He doesn't want to offer you half of himself. He doesn't want to show up distracted, stressed, or emotionally unavailable and call it love. If he can't give you his best, he'd rather wait until he can. That waiting period is an absence of feeling. It's proof that the feeling is serious. When a man loves you, he's not just thinking about how you make him feel. He's thinking about how he makes you feel. That shift changes everything. It makes him cautious. It makes him intentional. And sometimes it makes him stay away until he's confident that when he comes close, he can stand firm, and love you the way you deserve. There are times when a man feels love so deeply that it changes the way he sees himself. It's no longer just about attraction or connection. It becomes a mirror. Love shows him his strengths, but it also exposes his gaps. When he realizes that loving you means being accountable, not just to his feelings, but to his actions. The weight of that response